Hi, Misha here, and we're returning to tanks and the 1930s. And in the first episode, we looked at the T-26, which started off as a two-turret tank, either with two machine guns or one machine gun and one 37mm cannon. Of course, soon the two-turret was replaced by a single turret, but the two-turret is cooler looking. But what's better than two? Three turrets. Meet the T-28. And this was not exactly the most successful tank design in the world, but it was very important for the Soviet Union's industry in manufacturing tanks. They really learned what did and didn't work, and learned a lot of lessons here. This was designed and built by the Kirov factory in Leningrad. The first prototype was done in 1931, and it had initial testing and was approved for full rate production in very late 1932, and was officially adopted into the Red Army in August of 1933. And three turrets might seem a little weird, but at the time, tanks really were being treated as battleships of the land, and they were mostly, at least by a lot, viewed as infantry for support vehicles, and the T-28 was no different. It was to support the infantry. It was to be a breakthrough tank, to break through and whatnot. So, what we have here, we have a main gun that's a 76.2 millimeter in the main turret, and our two smaller turrets actually have 7.62 DT or DPT machine guns, and we've got a respectable number of rounds for those on board. We have usually 70 rounds for the 76 millimeter. And what made the T-28 a little unique for its day and time, it was one of the first tanks to offer machine guns for aircraft defense. It would have anywhere from 1 to 2 more DPT machine guns for air defense. I know that seems very quaint today, but back then that was forward thinking, as was making a radio a standard piece of kit. And originally it would have the kind of horseshoe looking antenna, which would be replaced in 1938, 1939 with later production models. The tank, like I said, would go into production in 1933, and the last ones would come out of the factory in 1941. They would build just over 500. Most would be the T-28A. The later T-28B would feature an improved 76.2 millimeter cannon. So they would build some of those. By the way, this had a crew of 6 to operate everything. Originally, its armor was from 20 to 40 millimeters, and originally it was a pretty fast tank, although later on its top speed would drop from near 30 kilometers an hour to only about 23, and initially it was about a 28-ton tank, but later versions would grow to about 32 tons. And, yeah, it's a tank. It does tank things. Really, its first major combat would wait until the invasion of Poland in September of 1939, by which time they were already on to the T-28B variant. And it would next be used in November for the Winter War in Finland. And this was Russia's common tank in Finland. By the way, this is classed as a medium tank, whereas of course our T-26 is a light tank. And in Finland, its pros and cons really showed off. It had good guns. It had a lot of them for its day and time. But its armor was quite thin. This would actually lead to the T-28C, which was started in 1940. It would have improved armor. The sides would go from 20 up to 40 millimeters in some places, and the front would go from 40 up to 60, and even in some instances 80 millimeters, which actually put it on par with the Panzers of the day. But this is when the top speed would really dip. And they would build a little over 100 of this version, the T-28C, and some of the older tanks would see updates too. It did prove to be quite durable in Finland. 200 were knocked out in that war, but many of them were hauled off the battlefield, returned to the Kirov factory, which is quite nearby in Leningrad, and repaired and sent right back into action. And this happened over and over to multiple tanks. So much so that Russia only lost about 20 in the Winter War, at least permanently. Of these, a couple would be captured by Finland. But when Operation Barbarossa happened in June of 1941, they still had 411 in the Red Army, so the majority of what were built were still there. But many of these would not last long that summer. They were used to kind of stall the German and back up the retreat in Russia. They were also used to defend Leningrad and Moscow quite a bit. So by 1942, there weren't all that many left. Those that were sent against the Romanian army, and they were sent back to Finland for the continuation war. And there Finland captured another 5 or 6. Between all this fighting and the fact that they were no longer in production would officially end in 1941. Again, Operation Barbarossa. Plus, by this point, this was a aging design, and it had pretty much been improved as far as it could be. And so spare parts were hard to find. So later in the war, the few that remained in Russia were pretty much just there for training. And again, Finland captured a handful, so they kind of played around with them. They called these the Stone House, by the way. I've also seen the name Stalin's three-headed dog. Today, only 3 T-28s exist in the world. 2 are still in Finland, and 1 is in Russia. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the multi-turret thing isn't as crazy. At least it wasn't by the standards of the 1930s. Today it seems kind of radical. But back then it was something that a lot of nations like France, Germany, United Kingdom played with. It just proved to not really be effective. But even though the design was only of middling success, it really helped Russia grow its tank production industry and just design in general, especially for, like, say, armor. And, 500 is no small number, so let's talk about it, yeah. But next time, if you think 3 turrets is a lot, well, next time we're going to talk about this guy. This is what the T-28 was designed to kind of support and complement Russia's heavy tank, the T-35. But that's next time. By the way, this is a 1/72 scale die-cast model from Eagle Moss, as will most of these in this video, or this series I should say, end up being. Appreciate you tuning in. Let me know what you think of this. It's pretty neat. I like the little machine gun on top. If you could, please like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.